As of recording, Starfield currently has a review score of around 56%, and its DLC, Shattered Space, is all the way down at 30%. And we've got absolutely hilarious cope here from Bethesda. First, I'll show you what they say, and then I'll explain why this is such hilariously pathetic cope. Games Radar says, Starfield's first expansion launched to mixed reviews. Well, that's currently putting it very generously, but continuing. One of the most common complaints about the DLC, however, was its lack of content in the form of new features, and that's why adding the first ever drivable land vehicle in a Bethesda RPG beforehand felt like it might have been a wrong move. As Microsoft gaming lead Phil Spencer reveals in an interview with GameFile, Howard was worried, that being Todd Howard of course, was worried that the rover's earlier debut as part of a free update was a bad decision on his part. So just to be sure that we're all on the same page here, they're attempting to make the argument that releasing the Rev 8 rover, this buggy thing that you can drive around, before the DLC might have actually hurt the public opinion of the DLC. In other words, they're suggesting that the rover, the Rev 8, whatever it's called, could have actually carried the DLC if they would have waited to release the Rev 8 along with the DLC instead of like a month earlier. This is a terrible take for a lot of reasons, but first let's go finish the quote before I continue explaining why. Todd and I were talking about Shattered Space, states Spencer. Starfield is a game I put a ton of hours into and really love, but they've had this thing where they've added features throughout the year and then they had an expansion. Are these people that out of touch? They're talking about like adding a functional map, which the game did not even release into, which it should have had on release, but adding things like a functional map and a few other minor updates here and there, maybe some performance increases for Xbox, stuff like that. Dude's acting like that was such great generosity from Bethesda. And maybe Bethesda should have waited to release that stuff along with the Shattered Space DLC with the expansion. Like that would have fixed everything. Instead of, actually addressing the issues that people really have with the game. He then delves into fan feedback on Bethesda's approach to Starfield's new content, as well as how it left Howard questioning himself. I think some of the feedback on the expansion is, we wanted more features. And he's like, well, should we have waited to put buggies out? These people can't be serious. The Bethesda head figured keeping the vehicle for the DLC could have helped flesh it out more. Spencer continues, and so I think you're trying to tune both developer effort and the impact of the expansion, and I think there will always be a balance to managing the game month to month, but not every game will do expansions. Bros, I actually can't believe this is a real quote. I can't believe this dude literally thinks, yeah, the buggies, we should have waited for the buggies. We should have released that with the Shattered Space, and then Shattered Space would have the very positive reviews, maybe great, overwhelmingly positive reviews. Yeah, it's all because the buggy was released a month before the DLC. That's the problem people have with Starfield and Shattered Space. We were too generous releasing that buggy too soon. Now let's also take a look at some data proving how terrible their take is. Player numbers here, SteamDB chart for Starfield. So, in the weeks before the buggy was released, Starfield had around like 10k players on a good day. When the buggy came out, spiked to around 15.9k before falling back down a bit, and then Starfield Shattered Space releases on September 30th, and the player count increases to 21.7k. However, that only lasted for a couple of weeks, and then the player count was all the way back down to a number even lower than before the buggy was released. And taking a look at the overall chart, you can see here's around where the buggy was released, this tiny little increase, and then the DLC here. And you basically got to squint. You got to like zoom in. You got to like get real close to your screen to even notice these quote unquote increases. Of course, they also mentioned other updates that Starfield has had throughout its lifetime, which most people would probably call minor updates. And you can see that none of this helped the game really. Like the player count has been consistently terrible, as Bethesda is also consistently not addressing the actual issues that most people have with the game. Meanwhile, over on our No Sodium Starfield, which is like the hive mind subreddit, you gotta censor anything critical of the game there and only prop the game and Bethesda up. In this thread from only 5 days ago, they say, Starfield was a massive mask-off moment for the Bethesda community and gaming community in general. Let me preface this by saying, this is not a hate post. I do not condone any attacks, nor do I wish for this to become a, quote, complaint about complaining, unquote, type post. This is just me recalling my past experience in the Bethesda community and gaming community in general, and how Starfield changed that and revealed some harsh truths, and also how it was in the end a positive thing. Oh great, here comes the Corpo Defense Squad. To reasonable people, the harsh truths that would be referenced here would actually be like, Bethesda's kind of hopeless. Like, I have completely lost hope for the next Elder Scrolls, stuff like that, right? But this guy's gonna probably not address any of that stuff. Instead, the harsh truth this person is probably gonna be saying is that the problem is the gamers and the gaming community, and we got a bootleg for Bethesda. They can do no wrong. So the post continues. The OP says, I've been a massive fan of Bethesda games for years, and naturally I became part of the community surrounding those games. And at first it was great. I had a lot of fun finding out all the lore and dev secrets as well as theorizing about them. Slowly but surely, however, I began to notice this mean-spirited attitude towards the developers. And at a certain point, I began wondering if they even like the devs at all, since all I heard is how quote-unquote incompetent and lazy, unquote, they are. But with some research, I discovered that's definitely not the case. Yeah, with some research, okay, buddy. Especially when you consider what they managed to achieve with a relatively small team for a AAA game. And it all came crashing down with the release of Starfield. It just came crashing down. 76 had a justifiably bad reception, but it was mostly a spin-off, and over time, it became a pretty good game. But Starfield? Man, everyone in the Bethesda community and in the gaming community in general went after that game. Yeah, you know, we're talking about a small indie dev studio here. For a AAA studio, they're so tiny. It's not like Microsoft is funding them either or anything like that, right? And a lot of the reasons for doing so seemed very shallow and at points untrue. It was what I consider to be a mask-off moment for the whole community, as it revealed just how much they followed the grift, which seems to be disliking everything Bethesda does for some very stupid reasons. And it was everywhere. Outside of the sub, which is great, by the way. Yeah, the hive mind sub that censors anything critical, that's a great place. I don't know if there's any other safe space to talk positively to this day. By the way, where's this guy's research he was going to present about Bethesda not being lazy and incompetent? He said he had some research into that, right? And then it just never went anywhere. Everyone went for the kill with this. And when you said you liked the game, you were viewed as a moron or a liar. It made me realize just how far the gaming community strayed from enjoying the games and replaced it with complaining. There are some legitimate criticisms that could be levied at the games, but they all get drowned out with all this clickbait junk. Not to mention all the pretentious gaming critics that don't have any clue about what goes into game development and then act like experts, like a certain critic that said the game used no design documents, which is utterly ridiculous. The worst part was that creators I used to enjoy watching turned to the grift as well and became much more unfairly negative. Like, for example, Mr. Matty Plays, who I used to enjoy watching, but now became just another clickbaity channel that complains a lot. But thankfully, this was not a bad experience in the long run for me, as it made me realize just how negatively these communities affected me. I eventually quit them and formed my own thoughts and opinions on our no sodium Starfield, which is why today I can write a post like this and show another positive thing Starfield has done to me by helping expose these communities for what they are, and they certainly are not fans. So thanks for reading. I hope you liked it, and remember, if a community starts becoming toxic, don't be afraid to leave it. There will always be much healthier alternatives. You know, I gotta say, it seems like Bethesda, Todd Howard, and this dude, they're all perfect for each other, man. All delusional. And when he says that people criticizing these companies don't enjoy games, I don't know if he's specifically referring to Bethesda, because that's the theme of the post was Bethesda. But at the same time, his phrasing made it sound kind of like games overall, in which case, hypothetically, if that is what he meant, let me address that really quick. I've seen other people on various subreddits also make similar takes. For example, when they were defending Veilguard, oh, these gamers, they don't even like games anymore. They just hate. And the fact of the matter is, while we criticize corporations and games, that doesn't mean we're not enjoying games. We enjoy plenty of games. Guess what? You can do multiple things in a day. You can enjoy a game and then criticize a game and do whatever else in a day. But for some reason, a lot of these people are completely devoid of any nuance. But yeah, I just found this stuff to be very amusing, and I hope you guys did too. If you enjoyed this video, you enjoyed my coverage, please consider liking and or subscribing to the channel. Appreciate ya, and I'll see you in the next one.